Welcome to Careless Coder. Today a very special video. Motherfucker! So the last year I sort of had a hiatus, a bit forced, a bit by my own choice. I had some health problems that endured for the last 3 years. I really focused on getting better. And also the business was kind of slow with the whole corona shit. So that's why I started this channel. And that's why I've been pumping out at least a video every week. Now I start a new contract as of tomorrow. So I won't be uploading every week a new video. I have videos lined up until January 14th. So up till then we still have a weekly release. But after that I will upload when I have something cool to show and not really actively creating content, since I won't be having that time. To soften that blow, I will give you a little present, which has to do with this stuff. My synthesizers. No, you won't be getting my synthesizers, no. I already got far too many, but I won't give them away. No, it's actually my album Kid of the 80s that I will give away. You have been listening to it basically the whole of the past year because it's the background music of my videos. So you can download that right now, link below, and you can use them in your videos because I know that a lot of the subscribers here create awesome retro content as well. So use it, because a lot of you don't really have a lot of fitting music and you don't want copyright strikes. This you can use to your heart's content. Now we will run through the songs that you get, because a lot of these songs have a very special story to them. Now the first song is Nightmare, or Nachtmerrie. It was a little song that I wrote for a little horror sketch that we were going to do with this channel that I used to work for called Man Cave TV. And yesterday I heard it and I figured, well, this could actually be an integral part of the album as well. But I changed it up just a bit to really fix in. I mastered it to fix in with the rest of it. So yeah, it's basically a 4-part song. A lot of these movie songs that you write for short films have 4 or 5 parts that you switch to with some drum fill or anything very similar like that. And then you can copy that sequence, or basically that loop if you want, to extend it for longer scenes. So this has this very long intro. Then we have the initial little melody line. That very 80s electronic marimba. And then we have a full-on melody line, which is really filled and that you can easily loop. We have a slow section, or a death section as they call it. Just a chord sequence, fills out nicely in the ambient in the background. And then the ending, which is very much Mike Oldfield inspired, I think. So that is Nachtmerrie, or that is Nightmare. Then Precinct 13. Well, every horror movie lover knows John Carpenter. And he's also a brilliant musician. I took his, basically his bass part, and I created a whole new song around it. A new melody line, a different chord progression. And for me, very important, very 70s sounding drums. Because I always found that the drum in his version was a bit too minimalistic. Not something that I would have played in the late 70s. So if you have not seen the original Precinct 13, watch that movie. It's really gritty. I think it's the first movie that I actually saw that a kid got murdered in cold blood. It really sent shivers down my spine watching it as a kid. It's an awesome movie, and Carpenter is an awesome director. and not very much of an influence, except for this one musically for me, but he's a great musician as well. Trapezoid. Unless you cut my videos off half time, which most of you do, then you may not have heard it, but it's always playing on the ending of my episode. And I recorded this in about 3-4 hours, something like that, on a rainy Saturday. Why is it called Trapezoid? Because it happened to be my favorite shape in the whole world. Missing the 80s, that is built around a little drum computer that I had borrowed from a friend. A little 808 sort of drum computer, sort of clone. You can hear that in the beginning. And I just wrote a song around it. Next up, Synthetic Journey. This may well be the first ever 80s synthesizer song that I wrote. I recall writing the first part back at school in 1987. We had an Ensoniq synthesizer then, and they sold it off later on in 89, I believe. And then bought a D50, and I hated them for it. I don't like the D50, still don't like it, even though I'm a Roland man, but that Ensoniq was really good. And I recorded it with my buddy on tape. It wasn't really good, we had to overdub by writing tape, sticking tape on the right hat, and I figured in 2015, let's re-record it. I have all this equipment, it's a good song. So yeah. You hear those long opening notes, that's very typical for me. Neo-goth horror, well, obviously inspired by horror stories. And at that time, when I wrote this, about 8 years ago, something I believe, I was watching a lot of 1930s, 1940s, 1950s horror. And especially in the 1930s horror, there was this lot of organ music, and that is basically what inspired this little run. This is a very typical, classical, diminished run. And it serves well for background music in a little horror, and sometimes you even heard it in my episodes on Callous Coder. Now Lost. Lost is one of the most recent songs. I written that 3 years ago whilst on holiday in England, and I always travel with this little keyboard. Either I have this keyboard with me and a laptop, or my mandolin recently. So I wrote Lost on this little keyboard and my laptop, and Lost was inspired by this awesome horror movie called 1984. And the guys who created 1984 before that created Turbo Kid. And Turbo Kid stood out because of the score by the Matos. The Matos are two individuals from Canada, awesome synth freaks, awesome synth players. So when I heard they were creating a new movie and I heard the Matos was creating the score for it, I watched it. And I watched it twice that holiday, because the first time I watched it I was absorbed by the music, I was listening to the music. And that inspired me to create this song. And the opening, you hear a phone. And this is a wink to the movie where this kid calls back to the number that allegedly the killer had called. And, well, you have to watch the movie. It's an awesome movie. So that is Lost. Also awesome background music. Then up Daphne. Well, or Daphne. My first ever girlfriend when I was about 8 years old was called Daphne. And I named my instruments, it's really weird. This is Pico, by the way. And my Roland F08, a big ass synthesizer, 8 octaves, that is called Daphne. And this was completely created on that Roland. You hear that arpeggio, very 80s. Then Dum Dum. Now, Dum Dum is actually a reference to myself. About 3 years ago, I guy contacted me whether I could fix his Prophet 5 synthesizer. Now these are very, very rare. So I said, yeah, sure. And he asked me for a quote, and I said, I only will charge parts when I'm allowed to borrow this for a week. And he was like, sure, go ahead. And when I turned it on, smoke emitted from it. It was like, oh fuck. So I turned it off and I measured it, and there were short circuits all over the place, which I thought all over the place. So I pretty much replaced the bridge regulator. It didn't solve it, a bloated fuse. And then actually I found that one of those big massive electrolytic capacitors had actually shorted. So I took that out, it came back to life, no smelling smoke. So yeah, it was in hindsight a very simple fix. And if you start methodically from the beginning, you would have found it very, very easily, dum dum. So that's when I wrote this song. Travel is also a song that I wrote on holiday 2 years ago, to be exact on Christmas Day 2 years ago, or the 24th of December. Also on this little Roland, whilst me and my parents were vacationing in Fuerteventura in Spain. And last but not least, Night of the 80s. Now, why do you think it's called Night of the 80s? There's some little sparkly hints of Knight Rider here and there. And I usually start with this song in the episode because of that awesome bass line that really communicates a beginning. So those are the songs. There's one big zip file below that you can click on, you can download them, you can use them royalty free, enjoy them, and I hope to hear them in one of your awesome channels. I hope you learned something, or I hope you downloaded something, and see you in the next one.